So a very good afternoon to all of you educators and welcome to our second workshop our third workshop, I'm sorry, in the Crimson Learning Festival brought to you in collaboration with the Jain Group of Institutions, Jain International Residential School and the Crimson Anisha Global Schools in Pune. Today's session would be led by Ms. Tasneem Qasim. So Tasneem is a very experienced practitioner in both the national and international curriculums. She started a journey almost 15 years back as a teacher, grew up to be a team leader, and then a coordinator, and then a member of the senior pedagogical leadership team of different schools in a 15-year-old journey. During this time, she's trained, mentored teachers from all across, right from the early years up to grade 5. She's also, besides penning articles as well as chapters in different books and even co-authoring one, she's also mentored a student from class 5 to publish their very first story that was released a couple of years back by a noted Bollywood actor, Mr. Tushar Kapoor. One area which Tasneem is really passionate about is community service. And that's something that she looks at incorporating in all our schools that we are working in. So at Crimson, Tasneem looks after our foundation years as well as our primary school. And today's session will be focusing on teaching strategies in the elementary years. So over to you, Ms. Tasneem. Looking forward to an enriching and an insightful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Hussain. Hussain, am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Okay, great.
Tasneem, just before you begin, just some housekeeping announcement. Just would like to reinforce, kindly keep yourselves muted. At the end of the session, we will allow you an opportunity in case you need to ask something. And if you also have any thing that you would want to ask Ms. Tasneem, you can post it in the chat box. And at the end, given keeping time this in mind, we will take up certain questions from the chat box itself. Thank you, Tasneem.
Thank you, Hussain. Well, good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today, facilitating and understanding about teaching strategies to all you eminent educators. Over my journey of 14 to 15 years now, I have attended various workshops and learned from experts, read various expert articles. And today, in this 1 hour that we have, and I'm going to try to help you all understand various strategies that could be implemented in your classroom. So how we will work with this is, I'm going to give you an example of the strategy. What I mean by that is that I'll explain the strategy first to all of you. Its relevance to certain subject areas, and then a concrete example of that particular strategy. And I look forward to listening to you, how you can, if you've implemented something like this before, it'd be lovely to hear from you as well. So all the very best to all of us in this teaching and learning session, and let's begin. So if I had to ask you, the first thought that comes to your mind when I say teaching strategies, a few thoughts, just splash your thinking. If you have a paper handy in front of you, just write that down, splash your thinking. Okay, so I'll give you like maybe 15 seconds for that. Okay, just quickly. I'm not looking at grammar, I'm not looking at creativity, I'm not looking at sentence structure. All I want is your thinking. Splash it. When you splash water, bubbles.
Ms. Tasneem, a couple of our participants are saying the volume is a little low. If you could just increase the volume,
is that
just
better
maximize
now?
it.
Sorry, I didn't read the chat. Is that better now?
Yeah, it sounds okay to me. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, please continue.
All right. Okay, so this, just splash your thinking. That's what we started off with. Keep that paper handy with you. I'm going to come back to it in a bit. All right. So this
so
is
Tasneem, sorry, I think a couple of participants are requesting because they were not able to hear you. If you could just repeat these splash your instructions, the instruction that you gave all of them.
Sure, it's right there in front. So splash your thinking. What did I ask you all to do is any concept, any topic, any area you're going to be introducing or you want to assess, give them a particular word from that particular concept, topic, and ask students to just splash their thinking. At this point in time, you're only looking at that thought. You are not looking at, grammatical constructs. You are not looking at, the pronunciation of how they explain, or you're not even looking at spellings. You're just looking at their thinking to understand what they know about that particular term. So when I asked you, splash your thinking about thinking strategies, all right, that's what I want from you. And this is the way it would look. Just splash your words around the piece of paper that you have. All right, so that's one way of just starting a particular class. And this is what I also did with all of you. Just splash your thinking. So let's move on. If you have a paper again handy in front of you, I just want you to quickly write this. I saw, I felt, I learned. Okay, then keep it handy with you as we progress and process, towards our session. I'm going to ask you to keep filling this in. All right, you can do that as and when you like. The learned column will be at the end of our session. I saw, I felt could be ongoing as and when you feel like answering that. All right, so just keep this handy with you and keep that thought with you. So we have I saw, I felt, I learned. All right, I'm going to move ahead. So what is the goal of today's session? What are we going to do and what are we going to understand? So today's session is divided into two parts. Part one is understanding. It's more theoretical, where we understand the why and what about the thinking strategies. And part two is the application bit of how we will use these thinking strategies. So let's quickly begin with part one. What is a thinking strategy? All right, it is more an instructional method. We all have learning objectives that we set for our class. We all have learning objectives for a specific subject, for our students. And how do we meet that? All right, so a thinking strategy or a teaching strategy or an instructional method will help us achieve that. It also helps us to create the right learning environment for our students. Teachers, if we don't create an environment which is inquiry driven, which is engaging for our students, learning is not up to mark. I personally feel that we have to give them that nurturing environment where they want to learn. The curiosity is built within them. So simply a teaching method or a strategy is a stimulation, it's a guidance, it's a way of direction and encouragement for learning. So teaching strategies are also known as instruction strategies, and which are methods that teachers use to deliver course material in ways that keep students engaged and practicing different skill sets. So if you have to remember this, I know this was not a theory for you, right? So if you have to remember this, simply remember it like this: TIS, thinking or instructional strategies, equal to MCEP. I'll repeat, TIS, it's in front of your screen, MCEP. So what does M stand for? They are methods. C stands for the methods to to implement your course materials, which keep your students engaged and help them to practice a skill. Easy enough, isn't it? All right. So why are these strategies important? Very, very good question. We have to think about that. Why are these strategies important? They help in fostering and improving our students' learning journey. They help, for students to make conceptual understanding, contextual and conceptual understanding. Also, if you want a class to be student-centered, we often talk, we have to have a student-centered classroom where students take ownership of their learning. They learn by doing. We have to get our kids involved in this learning process. So that is why a teaching strategy is very, very important. So how will you remember why it's important? Remember FIC, F-I-C. It helps in fostering. It helps in, getting our students involved, and then helps them to make contextual and conceptual understanding. So let's move ahead. So if I had to put it, I love writing poetry, and I make sure I try to put it in whenever I can. So if I had to put it in a nutshell, in poetic form, what is a teaching strategy? A teaching strategy need not necessarily be fancy. Please understand that. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be simple yet engaging, instead of being complex and time-consuming. So when planning the same, think of how you can include some element of creativity, some movement, tech, or a game. This helps students to enjoy the learning process, and it eases out any sort of anxiety or stress. Are you all with me? I hope so. Okay, all right, fantastic. So just give me a minute. All right. So how can a teacher be effective in the classroom? We've spoken about teaching strategies, right? Now, these are why do we need a teaching strategy? What is a teaching strategy? But for that, we as teachers have also to be equally effective. We have to have very clear and fair expectations, a positive attitude and a mindset. Very importantly, to be mindful. Ms. Fatima Khadi led an exclusive and amazing session on mindfulness. And that's how you will use a teaching strategy, which is inquiry driven. So let's begin. Okay, now we're actually going to start. All right. So today is going to be a lecture for about 45 to 60 minutes that I'm going to take. All right. So are we ready? All right, let's begin. Did any of y'all feel like this? Can y'all relate to this picture? The moment I said lecture. I'm sure most of us have felt that. I felt that the moment I said the word lecture, my boring. Oh my God, how much is she going to talk? Is she going to give any examples? I'm going to be snoozing. It's like my tea time right now. It's dictatorship. And that's not what we are looking at. All right. So now think, when I said the word lecture, the first thing that came to your mind, I'm sure would have been boring, right? If not, wow, I'm so happy. But if it is, not a problem. I would feel that too. But that's the way we've always perceived a lecture to be, right? There's one person talking, others are only listening. We are all passive listeners in a lecture. Now think about your students. Why do we witness any sort of distractions? Why is there lack of focus? Because most of the times we are the ones talking and they are the ones listening. I'm not saying it's all the time, but many a times that happens, teachers. So they cannot relate to what you are saying. They are passive and not involved in their learning. They don't want to learn that way. That's not their learning style. So a lecture can also become interesting, probably if you look at it from this lens. If it's lively, okay, you have some fun, you have some movement, it's educative, obviously, it's creative, it's thought-provoking, it gets the students to think, give their own perspectives. There's a lot of element of understanding, it's relevant to the child and their age. And lastly, it's enjoyable. And I promise you, I'm going to try doing that today. I'm going to make it enjoyable for you where you can relate to it. And I'm looking forward to that. So before planning your class, teachers, one thing we have to keep asking ourselves, all of us should do that. The why, the what, and how. 3 basic questions. Why is your purpose, okay, of the class? What is the subject matter? What am I going to teach finally? And how? How much time do we have? Time management. Today, I know I'm going to be struggling a bit. I myself am going to struggle because I have so many strategies to share, but I'm going to try. But in a classroom, we have to make sure what we have planned is delivered to the team with enough time for reflection from the students. So enough of theory. I'm sure you're all bored now with the theory. Let's move on to some practical knowledge and understanding. I will be sharing some strategies that you could use across grades and in different subjects. So these strategies, teachers, please don't limit it to the way I am showing it to you. We are creative and innovative in our thoughts and approaches. So we have to amend and adapt the way we need it in our classroom, the way that works best. These are just examples that I'm going to be sharing. You are the best judge for your classroom. So before that, a quick recap. How many of you remember the acronyms I shared? What is a teaching strategy and the importance of a teaching strategy? Do you all remember? If you remember, you just put it down on that sheet of paper that you have, and I'm going to come back to you. All right? Okay. So now I need you all to focus. I need a lot of attention. It's time for some brain gym. All right. You've already heard me for about, I think, 5-7 minutes now. So before we move on to the next, the practical part, the most important part that you're looking at, let's do some brain gym. Okay. Very, very simple. Please do this in your classrooms also. Giving breaks to your students. It's very, very important for them to come back to what you want them to learn. Okay. So very simple. We'll just do the lazy 8. Stick your hand out in front of you, right in front of you, shoulder length. All right. Your thumb up, straight pointing. And then you are going to make the figure 8. And while you're making the figure 8, you're going to focus on the movement of your thumb. All right. Very, very simple. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. And the last time. Super. So you're all with me, I hope. Okay. All right. Let's begin. So now the practical part. Now quickly on a sheet of paper, whichever paper that you have in front of you, in case if you do, or even if you don't have, it's absolutely fine. I would like you to write down in your book or diary or whatever you have handy, what you thought was a teaching strategy. Okay. What is your thought? That first thought that comes to your mind, what was teaching strategy? That's all I want you to write. And then I'm going to come back to you again. Okay. So I used to think, this is the template you can use. I used to think, all right, whatever is your thought about a teaching strategy. But now I think, leave that thought there, because at the end of the session, I'm going to come back and ask you to fill this. So I'll repeat. What is a teaching strategy? What you thought was a teaching strategy according to you. All right. Just write it down. I used to think, and leave that, write that down. And then the next line you will write, but now I think dot, 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 and we'll come back to it. Super. So I'm going to start sharing with a few grouping strategies with you all. We often talk about group work, right? We want our kids to get together, develop social skills, listen to one another, because group work really helps that, accepting ideas, listening, understanding different perspectives. So how do we group children? Randomly, okay, you five get together, you five get together, or sometimes we get all the intelligent ones together, the weaker ones together. I'm going to share 3 strategies with you, which you could use to group your students, and they love it. So one is grouping by sound. All you have to do is give them a picture of an animal. It could be a dog, duck, the sounds that they can make. All right. And then you tell them, close or open your eyes and make that animal sound. Everybody makes that, and they have to identify who has the same animal sound or who's making the same animal sound. You would be surprised to see how your class bubbles and buzzes with enthusiasm. Even the weaker ones, the dull ones will start doing this. And they move around in the class looking for their partner who has the same sound. The second grouping strategy you could use is use synonym vocabulary cards. So you have a set of synonyms written on different cards that you can create, just print them out, and then randomly pass it to your students. Now, if you want to also group them through your strategy in terms of you want a homogeneous group or a heterogeneous group, you can decide who you want to give which card to. Once you've handed over the cards, then have the student find the other person in the room who has the word that means the same, which is written on their card. You can try this with antonyms too. So this was the second grouping strategy. And this is my favorite, actually, the clock partners. You can give each student a chart, something like the one you see on the screen, and then have them go around assigning themselves a partner for each time of the day. Then you'll have a 1 o'clock partner, a 2 o'clock partner, a 3 o'clock partner, whatever time of the day that what they have written. Then whenever you want them to group together, you tell them, you will now group with your 12 o'clock partner, or you will group with your 11 o'clock partner. So whoever's name they've written at 11 o'clock, they will go to that person, team up together, and work on the assigned task. Don't worry about the strategies. I can share them with you at the end. So don't worry if you've missed out anything. So let's begin with our next strategy. That's called I'm going to divide them into thinking strategies now. So the thinking strategies work beautifully. We always tell children, no, think outside the box, think like this, think like that, critical thinking. But what are the opportunities we provide for thinking? So this is a lovely strategy to use. It's by Howard Gardner under the visible thinking routines, and it's called the zoom in. Now the name itself suggests zooming in. So what does this do? It helps students observe gradual, small portions of an image very, very closely. Then they develop an hypothesis. They think, what does this image look like? What do you think it looks like? There is no right and wrong answer. Teachers, you have to understand that there is no right and wrong answer at that point in time. Each child is shown the image. They all have a sheet of paper. They write, I think this looks like, or I think this is, okay? Now, where you can use these routines is in an arts class, okay, for visual arts, to examine the techniques used by an artist. You can use it in a history class. It works beautifully, actually, in a history class to examine key events, through an image. Science, if you want to examine some concept through an image, it works beautifully in that as well. So now let me show you how to use this strategy. So Istvan Banya has authored several picture books that are perfect to use this thinking routine. One of them is called Zoom. Perfect, right? Sounds so appropriate right now for what we are doing. So it begins with a large image, something like this. Okay, so if I were to ask you, look closely at this image, what do you see or notice? What is your hypothesis? What is your thinking or interpretation of what this might be based on what you are seeing? All right, and then gradually reveal another portion of the image and reveal more of the image for your students. Then again, ask them, what new things do you see? How does this change your thinking and your interpretation? This new information that you have, okay, do you have any wonderings? Has it changed from what you wrote previously? What do you now wonder about? So these are the kind of questions that you can actually ask your students to answer. Then repeat, reveal until the whole image is revealed. So this rooster is just a part of the entire farm book picture that was there, okay? And then you can ask your students, what are the questions that you still have about this picture? So you saw the first picture was looking like a crown. No one, I don't think we could have ever imagined it was just the top part of the rooster, right? So, and this the kids love because they're so curious and they all want to share so much that it's a great way to introduce something. So another book that you could use to introduce this particular routine is the Flotsam by David Weissner. He loves writing wordless picture books. And then slowly you can reveal the illustration while using the zoom in prompts. So I'll give you another example for this. So that's part of the picture. You see another part of the picture. Another part. And then finally, that's the picture. So then you'll have lots of questions coming up. We often say children don't ask questions, they're not interested, but we've never kept the right provocation for them. So these provocations also help in students thinking, analyzing, interpreting, and sharing their thoughts and ideas. Remember, the most important thing is let them feel comfortable. There is no right and wrong. We need to encourage them to share. So the next strategy we're going to talk about is the chalk talk strategy. Now, this is one of my personal favorites because this, I have been a very quiet student all my life and I never would answer any questions. So this routine, it's always, the kids who are smarter or who are vocal enough, they could get the chance to, answer. So I was never the one who answered. So this routine helps actually those backbenchers or those children who are shy to actually speak up. So this routine gives you an opportunity to reflect on what you already know and then share your thinking and wonderings while connecting it to that of your classmates. Okay. Of course, the name suggests chalk talk, but there is no chalk involved in it. It's more of talking and writing. So it's a good way. Why should we use this routine? It's a good way to start a lesson, to find out what the children already know, the kind of prior knowledge they have about a particular topic, concept that you're going to introduce. It also helps, like I said, the shy students, especially in the elementary or middle school, to share their opinions because they are many times rarely heard. It's always those 2-3 students who always want to answer. They raise their hand and they answer. And then Chalk Talk provides a forum for those introverted students who are hesitant to share their ideas with their peers. They wonder, what will Miss think? What will my friends think? And they kept themselves aback. So now I'll share some examples with you. So this was just why you can use Chalk Talk, because it's very, very engaging. And most importantly, it helps students make connection. It helps them to speak up, all right, which they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Most importantly for us as teachers, it helps you to assess students' knowledge prior to starting, okay, when you're starting a topic, to know what they already know about the topic, and then to check on their understanding as you are progressing with your topic. So here it is. How does this work? Tell your students they have 30 seconds to think of the topic that you've given them. They have 30 seconds of silent think time individually. Then set your timer and then say you have 2 minutes to write down all that comes to your mind the moment the topic is revealed to them. All right. Then during the Chalk Talk, now have them move around. You have to circulate around also in the room with your students while they are writing, to see how they're interacting with their peers. What are the questions that they have? What are they not understanding about the topic? What are they writing on that sheet of paper that you've provided to them? I'll be showing you some examples of the Chalk Talk that have taken place. Then students as a team, they work together through different prompts that you've provided to them, and then they keep sharing it with their peers. They keep rotating if they want to. You can adapt to this the way you want. If you want them to rotate around, they can rotate. If they want them to be seated at one station, that's absolutely fine as well. Once you have completed the task, they have gathered all their understanding, they've put it down on paper, etc. Now it's a good time to discuss what surprises them, provide any clarifications, correct any misconceptions that they have, and try to answer any questions that may have arisen through this activity. Always hang up the posters that they have created, because that helps in visual learning as well. And that's a good document for them to keep revising and revisiting what they have written, change anything if they want to add on to it. That's also helpful to them. So here is an example. Yeah, one thing we need to remember, teachers, is that when you assign a group, if they're working in groups and there are 4 or 5 groups working simultaneously, give each group a color so that you know which group has written what. All right, that's very, very important. So here is an example of a chalk talk that took place. Is this art? The teacher had put an image and asked a question, is this art? And students give their responses. Again, we're not looking at neatness. We're not looking at creativity. We're not looking at grammatical constructs. We are just looking at their thoughts. Students have asked questions. They've posed questions to somebody else who's written an answer or other understanding. And there's a lot of discussion automatically that is taking place. So here are some examples of chalk talks from students and from teachers from kindergarten. They were asked, what is science all about? What do they understand by the term science? And this is what their understanding was. Then you have some second graders, sharing their strategies for tackling through math problems, tough math problems. So how do you solve a math problem? What do you do when you are stuck on a math problem? So this is what they have written beautifully. A little older grades was like 3 to 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those grades, they were looking at reading genres, and then they shared their understanding about different reading genres and what they understand by fiction, non-fiction, poetry, realistic fiction, etc. We had fourth graders, reflect on their reading lives. Okay, what are you most excited to read about? So this is what they had shared. So in a nutshell, this simple activity serves so many purposes. For you as a facilitator, it helps you assess. It helps students to brainstorm. So if you've never done chalk talk, try giving it a shot in the next school year, probably when physical school starts. We're looking forward to that. It's a joy to see students, even the shy ones, to actually come out and share their understanding. So let's move on to the third strategy. Okay, tug of war. Rings a bell? It just takes me back into time about the game that we used to play, tug of war, especially during sports day. And I used to love that. I used to look forward to that. So what is this tug of war thinking routine? Basically, it is a routine that identifies two opposing sides of a problem or a situation. What happens is, teachers, many times we give students a scenario, a situation, and children often blurt out an opinion without actually even thinking about the issue. So the tug of war encourages students to initially suspend aside and think about multiple pulls or reasons in support of both sides of the issue. So the generation, the exploring of multiple supporting details and ideas is the key to developing deeper thinking. So how does this work? Show you that. Okay. What do you need to do? Identify a dilemma for students. This could be in the form of a picture, a text, or a video. Ask, what seems to be the issue here? Then you can draw a line with a small central intersection to represent both the sides. Then have students name both the sides of the rope, the opposing and the viewpoints. For each side, ask the students for the tugs or the reasons that support that particular viewpoint. Kids record reasons and tugs on sticky notes. Okay. Then in a small group, get together, discuss where to place the tugs. The most strongest tugs will obviously be the anchors. They'll obviously be at the extreme ends. The ones which are weaker will come in the center. So this is an example used by one of the teachers that I had read about, and I would like to share that with you. So students were learning about a particular literature text, and that was Cassie and the Bat. It was a podcast that they had listened to. Then the teacher presented students with a controversial issue from the poem, The Mudville Hens Lost the Game That Day. Now she questioned them. Do you really think it was Cassie's fault? She gave students sticky notes and they had to write them down, supporting their evidence, whether they agree or they disagree. And the conversations that I saw, when in the video, they had, while writing out their sticky notes, were just phenomenal. Students were quoting part of the text. They were pulling in personal experiences of being part of a team, sharing their own experiences of how the team won, the team lost, what led to it. And there was a whole lot of talking and chatter that took place. So again, even the most shy student will start talking and sharing their own ideas and perspectives, because there's nothing right and wrong in this again. So this is how the tug of war will look. Okay, so you have the main tugs on the extreme ends, and then you have the weaker ones at the center. So these are some examples of topics that you could use to get started. All right. If you're teaching history, when you look at the Boston Massacre, was it wrong for Paul Revere to misrepresent the events of the Boston Massacre in his drawing? Harriet Tubman, used some tactics that might be seen as a little extreme in order to safely transport the slaves to the Underground Railroad. Is she justified in using these methods? Is humor always appropriate? Albert Einstein, so we all talk about him, give his examples. So some scientific discoveries like the atomic bomb done, they're negative. They're not, people think it's not right. But did he have good individual intentions for this? So these are some starters. I've just given examples of how you could use it. Feel free to use it the way you like and what is best suited in your classroom. So the fourth strategy, all right, is the 4Cs. Okay, so it talks about, remember the acronym CAMI again. Okay, it provides students with a structure for text-based. So whenever you're doing literature specifically or anything with reading, you could use this strategy beautifully. When you're giving them a comprehension also, you can use this strategy beautifully. So it helps to make connections, ask questions, identify key ideas, and consider application. So you remember CAMI, okay? Consider applications, ask questions, make connections, and identify key ideas. All right, so let's see how this is used. So this is how you can use a template. What connections can you make with the text? You can make text to text, self to text, the world, etc. What challenge do you face? What puzzled or challenged you in the text? What was confusing about this particular text? Concept. What themes or ideas is the author using in this particular text? So the concept. Change. How did the character's attitude or the actions or thinking change throughout the text? This is something that you can use, especially for literature. So that's again, in a nutshell, how you can use this strategy. So we had somebody respond to a video. A video was played and the students responded using the 4Cs routine. So it's not only about text, but you could also use videos if you want to use this routine. So how does this connect? All right. What are the concepts or big ideas that are important? What changes, again, can you see? And again, the challenges that you have to talk about. So this is a very, very extremely powerful thinking routine and gives students a structure. Sometimes students don't know where to begin, how to start, from where should the responses begin, how should they be worded. So this kind of a structure of 4Cs gives them the right platform to start sharing. Also, it enables every child to be involved, especially when you're doing this as a group work, all right? If the kids are divided into groups of 4 and 5, the smarter ones will obviously start sharing and putting down the ideas quickly. But the ones who are at the average level or lower level will build onto those ideas. They will look at that ideas, take it as a starting point and build onto it. So automatically your differentiation also comes in very, very easily. And especially when you've used a video, the students can keep going back and forth, keep pausing, rewinding, going back and seeing what has happened and then answer the questions that you have posed to them. Okay, time for a water break. I want you all to just sip some water if it's handy, because we have a lot of information and then I want you all to be able to perceive it, to take it in, to retrieve it and to retain it. All right, so a water break is essential. 10 seconds, sip some water. I'm going to do that myself. And we need to do this in our classes also, teachers. We have to give them small breaks for them to come back to what you want them to understand. Okay, otherwise they'll be out of focus. Okay, I hope everybody sips some water and we move ahead. Sorry, I'm going to run short of time otherwise, so I'm going to move a little ahead, but excuse me for that. Okay, the fifth strategy that I'm going to talk about is the lenses. This strategy works beautifully when you're looking at artwork. Okay, so the purpose is to look at an artwork with a distinct lens in mind. What is a lens? It is something that you look through. Now, our lenses are affected by our backgrounds that we come from, our identity. So it could be occupation, family, role, wherever we stay, culture, etc. So these identities affect the way we look at something, the way we perceive a picture. Our background knowledge and information always comes in the way of our perceptions. All right. So this routine invites students to be intentional about looking through a lens. So take a look at this picture. I'll give you a few seconds. If you want, you can jot down your questions that you have about this picture. Look at what is happening. What is this picture all about? Where is this taking place? Whatever you understand about this picture. And now, so I've kept the picture there for you. Look closely at the artwork. What do you notice? Make lots of observations. This is something which I want you to do individually and independently. Think about how you see the world through your lens. Think about what you understand in this picture through your lens, through your understanding. Ask a question if you want to fellow participants if you have. Once we share, we can build on to that. Or you may not be agreeing to something that the participant has said. It's absolutely fine. All we need to do is probe and ask. Tell me about what you see and think, what you feel about this picture. Reflect. Take a minute or two again at the artwork. So after you've asked your questions, after you've probed, you've understood from your friends their perspectives, go back to the picture. Now has your thinking changed? Do you perceive this picture in a different way? So this is a strategy that works beautifully when you're doing art-related stuff. Of course, you can do it for history also, you can do it for science, anything at all for that matter. That's okay, it's how you want to adapt it. But this is the way you could follow it. So just a few seconds of silent thinking. Great. So this strategy is super fun. It's called listening 10 times 2. Okay, so listening 10 times 2 is a routine for making careful observations about music. All right. We generally, sideline music, art, dance, drama sometimes, but they are equally important. All right. For holistic development, each of this is equally important. And we got to keep our students engaged. So how does this work? You listen to a piece of music very quietly. Let your ears wander around, take in as much as possible. So like right now, what if I ask you, just close your eyes. Think of all the sounds that you hear around you. Then list 10 words or phrases about any aspect of what you hear. Now repeat steps 1 and 2. So listen to the piece again carefully, or listen to the sounds again carefully. Now add on to your word list. You first wrote 10 words, maybe write 5 more. So what is the whole purpose of this routine? Is to help students slow down and make careful observations about music specifically. Okay, it encourages students to go back, listen, and come back and write what they heard. Okay, it's not that just one time we listen and that's over. No, it's always better to go back, revisit, and come back. Now, where can you use this? Any kind of musical instrument that you're going to teach them, sounds, notes, all of that. Okay, when you introduce a new music piece, you could get this strategy going with the students. Okay, and you could, whenever you're having an in-depth discussion about music, new music pieces, again, you can use this strategy. Now, just one thing you need to be careful about is, or remember, that they may not be able to write 10 words or phrases. That's absolutely fine. You got to set the environment right. So you first got to choose a right piece of music, get the kids to take it in, soothe it in. So basically, close your eyes, set the environment rolling for them. Even if they want to lie down on the floor for a bit, it's absolutely fine. Especially the babies, they love that. Okay, listen to it. Then share the responses. If they can't think of 10 things, it's okay. Even 2 things, start with 3 things. And gradually, when you keep doing this routine a couple of times, they'll be able to give more and more answers and opinions. And then you can always share what the students have written with one another, peer learning again. So our next strategy, okay? Before I go on to this strategy, I think we can just close our eyes for 5 seconds because we've already finished 6 and there's quite a bit that we've shared. So just close your eyes and breathe in, take in all that we've learned so that we can be ready for the next few that are coming up, okay? Just a few seconds of deep breathing would help. All right. I mean, in a realistic class, if it was in a physical classroom, I would have gone a little longer, played some music for you all. But right now we're running short of time. I'm so sorry about that. But yes, if it was the actual classroom, a physical classroom with the students, give them enough time to take in what you have taught, to process their learning and thinking, what you've explained to them or what they've done currently, and then move on forward. so that application bit is easy for them. Next strategy. So this strategy is called the color symbol image. This works beautifully for children who find it difficulty to write, any difficulty that they face with writing and they can't express. Many times I come across students, they know the answer, but when I tell them to write about it, they're like, no, miss, we don't want to answer. I cannot do this. I'm sure you must have faced the same. So this strategy works beautifully for those kind of students, okay, who have a difficult time to write. They will love this. So let's go and see how we can use this. Okay. So students select a color to represent key ideas, the mood or tone of the theme. They select a symbol to represent core ideas, and they sketch an image to capture the big idea. Okay, so that's the color, symbol, image. That's how it works. And this is an example of how it was used. So there was a chapter read from Little Women, and students were asked if they could use the CSI to show their thinking. So this is an explanation of what one child had done. So she chose royal blue because the March family was poor, but they were rich in love. Okay, for that child, blue was the color. Okay, a dove shows peace, and the four sisters always make up when they fight because they want to please their mother. All right, and she drew perfume because all the girls sacrifice their money to buy Marmee Christmas presents like perfume. All right, so color, symbol, image. So the main ideas were these, what the students perceived after reading that particular text. Okay, let's move on to our next strategy. That's the E3. It's a very, very simple strategy. No long explanation for this. As you read, it's very, very self-explanatory. So especially when you're doing mathematical concepts and you want students to really get a hands on it, this works beautifully. So what is the E3 routine? You estimate a mathematical process needed, reasonable solutions and ways of modeling or applying the question. You explore ways of answering a question. Okay, then explain the process to the solution. So that's the E3. Okay, so you estimate, you explore, and you explain. Of course, you can use it to other disciplines also, but it works best with mathematics and science. Time for some more brain gym. Okay, we've already done 8 strategies, and for more focus, let's do a little bit of brain gym. And I would recommend everybody to do this in their classrooms as well, especially when you're trying to do something new. Okay, you're moving from one to the other. Okay, when a new teacher comes in, I think you should always start with the brain gym so that they're all together with you focus. So let's do the hookups. Okay, the more hookups. All you have to do is join your fingers, make it in a tent formation. Okay, if you can see this, and it's right in front of you also. And then tap your fingers together. Once more. All right. This helps you to really relax, focus, and concentrate. And you do this regularly in your class. Trust me, your students will all be there with you. Especially right now with online learning, we see a lot of children getting distracted, not being able to sit for a long time. Brain gym works beautifully for them. So let's move on. Step inside. Okay, so this strategy is again a very popular strategy, and this we always often say, that step into the shoes of so and so. Think like that. Think if you were in this place. But how are you supposed to think like that? What is the kind of provocation that you need to think like that? Okay, so this strategy helps learners to view a place, people, situations through a different lens and different point of view. It opens up possibilities of creating, like a writing piece for that matter. Now you have to step inside, all right? You see a picture in front of you, okay? Imagine you were the little boy, okay? What is this boy perceiving? What is happening around him? What might the person know about or believe? Does he know why this is taking place? What might the person care about? Okay, you've stepped inside this character and you are looking from his lens, this little boy right here in front of you. And these are the 3 questions you are asked. And that's what you can ask your students also. So you're stepping inside the character, stepping inside the situation. Let's move on. This is some few examples that you can use this routine through different curriculum areas. So English, exploring how and why characters make particular choices, or how have a particular character reacts to a different situation or event. Then in history, it works beautifully, especially when you do World War, etc. As older kids, thinking from a soldier's perspective. We never think from that perspective and that angle. So how about thinking from a soldier's perspective? So when you step inside your character, all right, what do you know? What do you think? What are you wondering about? And what did you see? This is just one prompt that you could use. Okay. Let me share this. All right. So now imagine you've read the story of Hansel and Gretel. Okay, very popular story. I've just taken this so that everybody would know about it. Now have the students sit around in a circle. Okay, keep a large sheet of construction paper or chart paper in the middle. You can have an image from that book. Okay, something which is provoking. It could be the image of the woods when they've gone inside, left by their mother. Okay, and then start recording. Tell them in advance that each child will get an opportunity to speak, so they need to raise the silent hand. Now ask every child to close their eyes and imagine you've been left all alone in the woods by your stepmother. How do you feel? What are you thinking about? What's bothering you? Then you can have students, as they share, you write down everything that they've written, especially if they're the younger ones. Older kids can write it themselves, depending on the story that you've chosen and the character they're stepping into. Then have students draw the character or the candy house or even their stepmother using some different art technique, okay? Write about the main character. Provide students with a writing prompt. I am so-and-so from this particular book. The title I can see. I think, I wonder, I care about. My internet is a little unstable. Just 1 second. Okay. So yeah, coming back, I'll just go back. I'll repeat this bit. So have the students write about the character. They've stepped into the character. So I am the character from this particular book. Okay, this is my name. This is what I see. This is what I'm thinking about. I care about this. All right. So this is what you can also do when you step inside the character's shoes. Moving on, this is one thing I would want to encourage everybody, that a part of your English block in a classroom is to take time out to listen and to guide students as they read. As educators, it is important that we record observations about students' fluency, accuracy, comprehension, and then use strategies to determine where they are and what needs to be further developed to move forward. So for a simple example, I'm going to share an example of a format used by a teacher to record group conferences. This template was inspired by L Educates on Instagram. So here it is. This helps you to identify or focus on a particular student, record, observe, and get the observations going, what the child is thinking, understanding, what is the goal of the student in reading. Okay, so there are two templates that I'm going to share. So the first one is the reading, it's a group template, and the second one is the individual student template. So the teacher will mark the student as he or she is reading on comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and the kind of vocabulary. Okay, then the student has a learning goal written for himself or herself. Okay, whatever is that learning goal, based on that, what you observe as a teacher during that reading conference that you have with the child is what you will write. So now, what is a reading conference is what I'm going to share with you. So a reading conference is a dialogue between a teacher and a student. The teacher does not dominate it. It is a two-way process where the student also speaks, the teacher also speaks, and they comment, share what they are thinking. Teacher's question is very, very important. The teacher asking questions is very, very important, integral at the reading conference. But remember, it should not dominate. A child should not feel, oh, I'm all the time being questioned, I'm judged. No. It is a way to help the child articulate and talk about what he or she is understanding or what he and she is, perceived of the text. And then how will he or she reach his goal? So comprehension takes place at 3 levels. Okay, it's very, very important for students to, literally understand what the text is, like who is the character, what is the name, infer, and then evaluate. So some questions that you can ask as a teacher to infer. Okay, what do you think? What is the relationship between? Can you explain why this is happening, or why do you say so? Do you agree with this? If you were so and so, or this character, what would you do? What is your opinion about this lockdown that has taken place? Okay. So, other questions that you can ask during a reading conference. Can you tell me what you are reading? What is it about? What text type it is? Can you tell me what have you read about the text so far? So these are some questions that you can ask as a teacher. And most importantly, get your students to write their new goals and how they're going to achieve their goal. That is very, very important, because without that, a student will not be able to progress, and you will not be able to observe and understand where the child needs help. So let's move on to the 11th strategy now. That's called visual literacy. This is a favorite amongst all students. They love this because pictures always, fascinate students, and a picture speaks 1,000 words. I go by that. So every picture tells a story. Okay, so it's basically making sense of what we see in a picture. Okay, and a follow-up could be the I see, I think, I wonder. Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture. I'm not going to talk much, but I'm going to show you the picture, and then we will discuss. So have a look at this picture. Look at every minute detail. And now, so the questions that you could ask could be, what did you see in the picture? What can you see in the picture? What do you think has happened or is happening? Or what do you think will happen in the picture? What do you wonder about? Like, one thing I wondered about was, why was the lamppost tilted? How did it fall? Okay. Why is this old lady looking out of the window? What is she thinking? What time of the day is it? Do you think she'll stand there for long? Do you think anyone else is in the house with her? Why do you think she came to this place? Where is this place? What brought her to the window suddenly? Maybe it's midnight, and why she come to the window? So you could use this template for students to answer. So what do you see? What do you think? And what do you wonder about? What do you see in the picture? What do you think is taking place in the picture? And what wonderings do you have about this picture? And then gradually you can read the text that you have with you, which you want to start with the children. All right. So when reading, all right, we can use some wonderful strategies, and one of them is a prior knowledge strategy. For that, you can make wondering cube. All right. So this is basically the whole purpose of this wondering cube is to gauge prior knowledge. All right. So what you have to do is you have to make a cube, and you need to put some questions or statements on every side of the cube. Each group gets the cube with the questions. The cube is tossed. Whatever question faces them, students answer. A discussion takes place, and then the text is read. So you keep revisiting and seeing what you had thought of, what you wrote, and now what is the text actually all about. That's how you can use this wondering cube strategy. Infering cards. These are also very popular and very go very well with the children. They love this because it's all about, it's like a game for them. All right, it's like a quiz for them. So before starting the book, you can actually ask them to think what it would be all about by providing these infering cards. So see, the text that you could have is, I see bubbles rising. I hear my own breathing. There are fish swimming above me. I feel the seaweed swing. So what's happening? Where am I? I'm scuba diving in the sea. So the text is all about scuba diving. All right. It's so dark in here. What's that squeaky sound? Oh, I feel something sticky and stingy touching my face. I'm getting nervous. Where am I? Students answer, I'm in a spooky house. All right. So that's how you will start your text if it's based on, some spooky character or the Addams family, etc. So infering cards like this, very easy to create, make, and then you start off with that, and you'll see your whole class will be buzzing with energy. and all of them will participate. This also works beautifully, the mystery bags. All you need to do is take paper bags and put different objects or items into that, but keep objects which help in sensory understanding. And then pack the bag up. So you can use potato chips, fruits, especially citrus fruits if you want some popcorn into it, some sweets and candies. Then the teacher, and then keep it in your class. The teacher observes the bag, and first, I think it's very important that you model before you ask the students to do that. All right, that's very, very important. So the first thing you need to do is pick up the bag, you model it for your students, and show how you will use your senses to infer what is in the bag. You can touch it, smell it, feel it, okay, and then you make your, and then you probably write it down and share it with your class. Then place these paper bags around your classroom, and then students work in pairs. They circulate around the room, going through every bag using their senses, all right? After all the students have observed each bag, then you facilitate a whole group discussion. Make inferences about the contents of the bag. Remember, it is important to ask which clue helped them make that inference. That's very, very important. Each bag is then opened and the inferences are proven correct or refuted. So this activity leads to a lot of discussion, a lot of talk and chatter amongst the students, specifically when you're doing a science-related concept as well, because that's what you can show a student, that how a scientist collects information and draws conclusions. Math games. Before I start math games, quickly, let's again sip some water and let's take a deep breath in once more. Just let's take in all that we have learned right now. Just calm ourselves down. You can do the hookups if you want to focus. You can make the lazy 8 if you want to, and then come back. All right. So moving on, math could be made a lot of fun. Okay, when you want to teach math games come in very, very, very handy. Okay, gamification is also one excellent method of doing so. So something like bouncing sums. Okay, what you can do is take a beach ball. On every side, you can write something about, one question about an integer, one decimal, a fraction, and you toss the ball. Okay, the student who gets it solves the question, then passes it on to the next. Now, what is happening is over here. Suppose you've written a fraction 3/5. All right. Once the student gets the ball and it gets the label of fraction, whatever answer the previous student got, the student has to use that answer and then add this fraction to it. So the students earlier got say 2/5, and now you've written 3/5 on your label. The student has to add that up and give you the answer. And then the game goes on. So you can do addition, multiplication, whatever you like, you can choose. But that's the way a ball can roll. You can obviously amend it the way you like and how you want it, depending on your topic. 101 not out. This is also fun for the class to play. So divide your class into 2 teams. Okay, you give them a dice to roll. Now they can decide whether they want to take the dice at face value or with multiply it by 10. And then they roll the die, keep adding, and the team that reaches 101, closest to 101, without going above 101, is the winner. So in this way, you've got them to practice, addition, subtraction, whichever concept you are looking at. Fishbowl strategy. So this strategy is a great way to encourage discussions amongst your classroom. We often have students to discuss something. We want them to listen to others, get into a deep discussion, make some conclusions about it. But how do we start? What do we do? What is a format? All right. So this one strategy really works well when you want to start a discussion in your classroom. So a small, medium to a large group size is doable for this, but I would still suggest not to have more than 10 to 12 children in a group. So students are separated into an inner and an outer circle. In the inner circle of fishbowl, students have a discussion. Students in the outer circle listen to the discussion. So the students who are sitting inside, they are actually discussing whatever topic has been given to them, and the outside circle is only listening and making notes. Okay. So this is how the arrangement would look. So you have the outer circle, You have the inner circle. Here there are two. You can have four also sitting inside. They're discussing, while the ones outside are listening, making notes, sharing and understanding. And then you can get them all together to share their thoughts and ideas. This is a lovely strategy to use, because I think when you teach someone else, you learn the best. All right. So when you get the kids to work together, they're coaching one another. You remember the time when we had exams and we used to go to our friends' houses and study together? It's a lot of fun, because automatically you are also revising what you know, and then you are sharing it with somebody else or your friends. So you're coaching. But it works best only when you have a prior understanding about a particular topic or concept. You cannot use this to introduce something. All right. So that's something we need to keep in mind. So that's why I said, like, it does not help to introduce a topic. It works best when there's only one right answer. We can't have open-ended answers for this. So especially math, science, that works beautifully. All right. So what is great about this? It's very, very effective with both declarative learning, where there are facts like identify and recall the body systems, or even if it's procedural learning, where you have to develop skills like being able to solve a geometry problem or a clue. So how it works? You start by creating reciprocal learning sheets with your class. You get a player A set and you get a player B set. So you have two sheets ready for you. Then you could use maybe chemical equations for that, multiplication, division, fractions. That's your choice of what you want your students to coach one another. Player A gets a set of questions which are different from what player B gets. The answers to player A's question are at the bottom of player B's sheet and vice versa. Okay. Now put students into pairs and make sure they both are working in partnership. So you've got to get kids together who are equally having knowledge about the content. We don't want any child to be intimidated. We don't want any child to feel, oh, I don't know, and my friend knows, and he's now like my big coach, and he's like tutoring me. No, they are coaching. That's very different. Okay, so it's not about where an advanced student tutors, where one knows more than the other. It's where both take the role of a coach and a player. So round one, how do you start? Round one, student A is the player who works through the problems given on his or her sheet, and player B is the coach who helps player A using the hints on the sheet that he or she has. Okay. Now, when student A has a problem, is not understanding something, what you as a teacher has to do is coach player B. You don't have to give answers to player A. You have to help player B to be able to coach in the right direction so that player A can understand. Once it's solved, the answer is solved by player A, they switch. Now player A becomes the coach and player B becomes the player. So a tip to use for this is model the process. Demonstrate helpful and not helpful behavior. Understand the importance of coaching and not giving out the answer. Giving hints, reminding them of what you have learned, and praising them for work done well. Seat students very important side by side and not opposite. When they're next to one another, they can see, the coach can see what the player is doing and probably offer the help at the right time. All right. So that's very, very important. And this is something additional. You can add an extra, challenge at the bottom of the worksheets for both, where they both solve it simultaneously. But they both first have to finish their role of player and coach. That is the criteria. All right. So if this is done right, students love it and they get self-directed, increase academic gains, and improve the quality of social interactions. So we come to the end of all the strategies. These were just a few of the many that we could share today. So before I end, okay, this is one strategy I would like to use with all of you right now. It's the 3-2-1. So if it was a physical world right now with me, and if you were in front of me, I would have taken a ball and passed it on to you. And I would ask you, what are the 3 things that you enjoyed learning about? 2 strategies that you will implement in the next 1 month, maybe, or 2 months. Let's take it that way. And 1 strategy that you will implement immediately, like in the next week. All right. So think about it, pen it down if you want to, or you're free to share it if you want to. You can unmute yourself and share it. So final thoughts. There are loads of strategies. There are different strategies available for your classroom. And the options are indeed overwhelming. But good news is Your teaching style, your students, and your classroom is unique. So why shouldn't your strategies be too? So start small, work your way up. Don't be afraid to try something new. We've all learned it as we are teaching, and it's everything will be fine and it's okay. All right. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be a good fit every time. That's fine. At least you've made an attempt. Keep engaging with your students and you'll build up lifelong learners with passion for knowledge. Thank you so very much for being a wonderful audience and listening to me so patiently. I apologize. I think there was a little lag with my voice. I'm so sorry about that. And yes, anyone who would like to share the reflection bit? 3, 2, 1. And also, I saw, I felt, I learned.
Thank you so much, Tasneem, for a very interesting and insightful session. Uh, to all our participants, teachers, I know some of you had some issue in terms of hearing some parts of the talk. So I shared with you the Facebook and the YouTube link. So on YouTube, once we end this session, you will be able to access the video, and you'll also be able to access the videos of Dr. Pandey as well as Fatima Kadir. So you can always go back and refer if you would ever want to go back to refer to a particular strategy or a particular teaching style. Thank you very much, Mr. Tasneem. If any of you have any reflections to share, we've given you access. You can unmute yourself. We've also shared the Google Sheet link for the attendance. Kindly mark your attendance on the same. Thank you.